Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your hosts, U.S. Air Force veterans Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as they will bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your hosts, Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson.
Hey, everybody. It is another riveting Beyond the Front Line. I am solo today because my one and only brother from another mother is off in Vegas, not to party, but he's at UNLV because he's been asked to do a retreat out there. So he's doing some pretty awesome things. And I, on the other hand, get to come hang out with three very funny, very cool guys. And we are actually going to talk about Parkinson's, which I know a lot of you are like, why are we talking about that? Well, we're going to get into why in a little bit, but I want to introduce them first. I got three here that I got to manage and wrangle them in. So we've already set the ground rules so they all behave. But I've got Ivan Brown, and Ivan was, he's an Army veteran, and he was a combat engineer, and he blew things up. And he's over here smiling at me, putting his hand up. He retired out. Ivan, when did you retire? I didn't ask that question.
2000.
2000. And then 13 years later, he lucked out. Lucked, we'll put quotes around that. And he gets diagnosis of Parkinson's. And then Schena. Did I say your name right? Schena?
That's close enough.
What is it?
Schena.
See, I knew I would mess that up. It's my New England accent.
There you go.
And Rick, he actually was in the Air Force. He's part of my team here. And he retired in 1980. Well, not retired. He was in the Air Force, in the Guard and the Reserves, correct, until 1985, 10 years, and he was a pilot, and mostly a heavy pilot, C-130s. My husband will like you very much. He was a C-130 load. And then he flew afterwards for United Airlines for many years. And then he gets a diagnosis in 2008, if I'm correct. And he gets diagnosed with Parkinson's. And guess what? Career ends, right? So we're going to talk about how that all came about and what he went through. And then we have their buddy, Patrick Feenhan. Now, Patrick hid from me that he actually was a corporate lawyer. And I laughed because he's really personable. And I was like, dang, I never saw a corporate lawyer overly personable. But then he went on and did other things. Chief Information Security Officer for a little bit. Was never a veteran, but is a veteran dad to his son who was in the Army. And here's the really cool part. I'm going to plug this in the beginning before we get started. Me and the executive director met these gentlemen a couple months ago as we were putting together the Coming Home Well radio stream. And they said, we want to do a podcast. And we've worked together and collaborated, and they have done all kinds of work. And so we're doing a promo episode for their upcoming podcast that's going to be called Let's Talk Parkinson's and Other Things. Did I get everything?
You
Power to the people. You got everything.
All right. So,
Donna, you nailed it.
Welcome, gentlemen. I'm so excited to have you guys. I've been looking forward to this podcast all week. So it's a highlight. And it's Valentine's Day, right? So how perfect is that, right? It's like a gift for me.
Where's my chocolate?
You want chocolate? Well, I got to have breakfast with my husband this morning. We snuck out for Valentine's Day breakfast. And then I get to hang out with you guys. So it's like extra Valentine's. It's kind of nice.
Nothing says romance like Parkinson. It's kind of how, we've always talked about this together. It's if you can be romantic through Parkinson's, you're a good couple.
You're a good couple. And that I am sure there'll be an episode in the series of your podcast that will come out with that. But I want to start, Ivan, let's start with you because honestly, this was your brainstorm. And Ivan, we'll talk about it. He's also an author about this too, right, Ivan? So tell me kind of your story briefly, military, when you got diagnosed and kind of where you're at.
Well, I'm originally from the New York City area. And
East
you know how
Coast.
people from New York come, they talk about the way we walk. We got this hip walk, so we got the bebop
Got
and
the
the boom,
swag.
the swag, just bebop it down. And people thought I walked like that on purpose. But I wasn't walking like that because my hip was killing me. And 2 weeks, everybody was saying, oh, it's your hip, it's your hip. So I was getting ready to get hip surgery. And then I said, you want to know what? I saw this baseball player on TV. I said, I walk just like that guy. I stopped the hip surgery and got a second and third opinion. And on my third opinion, I happened to go to the VA Center in Baltimore, and they had one of the best movement disorder specialists in the world. Him and his wife. So they look at me, and we argue back and forth because he said, "You're not swinging your arm." I said, "I'm in the military. I swing my arms. Your left, your left, your left, right."
Right.
And then the person that came with me said, "Ivan, you're not swinging your arms. So what's up? What you got?" "Oh, you have Parkinson's disease." I said, I just thought of Michael J. Fox and a lot of other stars that have it. Neil Diamond, the guy that sings Sweet Caroline. Oh. I said to myself, I got that. So I didn't really feel too bad. I said, I'm going to fight this. And that's how I found out I had Parkinson's. But the sad thing about it is a lot of the movements that I was doing stuff like that 15 years before I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, especially when I came back from Korea.
We're going to talk about that in the podcast. We're going to talk about these signs that are early that you guys are reflecting on going, oh, shit, that's what that was, And so we'll get to that. Rick, my friend, I'm a little shocked, though. You do not have a glass of wine with you. Every time we've met, you've had a glass of wine. Maybe I shouldn't say that if your doctors are listening. It wasn't real wine. It was like grape juice or something, but he always had a glass with him. You're doing it without today. Oh, potty break already?
No, I'm going to get my wine.
For the audience, they're not going to be able to see us. We all, because there are four of us, and if we all talk at once, then we cancel each other out, and it doesn't do any good for you guys. So I said, raise a finger up, and we'll just move to the next person when one's over. And Rick says, what happens if I raise two? And we're like, that's a potty break. Right. So what's your story, Rick? Tell us a little bit about, where you were and how, because it really changed. I mean, it changes everybody's life, but this was a career stopper for you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Parkinson's, affects everybody a little bit differently, especially with your jobs. If I had a desk job, if I was just doing something like working at, 100 other things other than being an airline pilot, I could have probably just kept on working. The FAA looks at this thing a little bit differently than a lot of people. And the way they look at it is, if you've got Parkinson's, you're probably not going to fly airplanes anymore. So,
I'm sure landing and takeoff's a little rough.
well, old shaky, that brings the term old shaky back, right? The airplane. Shaky. But no, listen, in all seriousness, I had the greatest job in the world. Command 777s, which I did for 7 years, 6 years prior to my diagnosis with Parkinson's. Most of those years on the 777, I was an instructor pilot. And
this was civilian side, correct?
This was a civilian side,
yeah.
And it was just a wonderful life. I mean, everything from the military, 21 years old, going through T-38 supersonic, to ending a career on a 777. But, it came to, I always say this, that when you walk through the terminal as a 777 captain, there was always this question, what's the difference between 777 captain and God? And the answer is simple. God knows he's not a 777 captain.
Oh my, you sure you weren't a fighter pilot?
I know. I learned from those guys. Right? But but in all seriousness, in one day, I went from being godlike
Yeah.
to praying to God. I mean, I was diagnosed as you're not flying anymore. I flew my last trip in from Europe, and I didn't realize it was even my last trip. I just had a trip to the doctor the next day, and he says, Rick, he said, I think there's time to put the flight bag down and start taking care of your health.
Mm.
So February 2008, I was diagnosed, and that was the last time I ever flew an aircraft. But I have to say this, Parkinson's in some ways has been the best thing that's ever happened to me, because while at first thought it looked like doors were shutting in my life, and actually what happened was a window closed in my life and doors have opened up. I wouldn't be here today doing this and affecting the people's lives that I deal with every day. I love it. I'm enjoying my life very much.
Look, and you wouldn't have this amazing podcast that's going to come up, nor would you be on with me.
There you go. Where's my glass of wine?
I'm raising two fingers up. Let's take a pause for that. That might have to be the new thing. Everybody has to have a glass of wine. I'm sure the doctors are like, oh, for God's sakes, who is this person? Shut her up. That's not medical advice. I was just saying.
Hey, Donna.
Yes.
One question though.
Yes.
Today's Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Where's my chocolate?
It's in the mail.
One shouldn't laugh about this, because if you ever go to a Parkinson's symposium or whatnot, they know the way to the heart of a Parkinson's patient is through chocolate.
Is
I
it?
can tell you that you can't bring enough chocolate to one of these symposiums.
Noted. No, guys after my own heart. I don't know. Maybe that's my early sign. Because when I was stationed at Lakenheath, I was nurse manager there, and I always joked around and said, I want to put a sign up that says, please don't feed the nurses and techs anymore, because in England they would bring up 5 pound. Have you ever seen those big? It's at Christmas they would have at least 5 pound containers of Cadbury chocolates, and I'm sorry, but
oh my God,
after you've had Cadbury, you'll never go back. And I mean, these huge things. And at 3:00, they would laugh at me. They're like, oh, just wait. You'll see her come out of her office or from the other floor at about 3:00. And I'd come mosey, hey, what's up? And my hand's going in the bucket. So that's a lot of years. Maybe I've been showing signs. Jeez Louise. All right. And then we have the one and only Patrick Feenhan. And Patrick, you crack me up. You're so funny. So you're a veteran dad. And
yes,
tell me a little bit of your background, because A, you're not a veteran, and B, you don't have Parkinson, but you're sitting here with us.
I am. I happened to move to the DMV area in 2008 to take a job at this college, and that's when I met young Richard Schena. And we became great friends, and he was just diagnosed. I had just been diagnosed with prostate cancer, so we felt like we were brothers of the
shocking
bad diagnosis.
Shocking diagnosis.
Anyway, and I had just been fighting my cancer and started the college and met Rick, and we became great friends. And so I've been part of his journey with Parkinson's, and heard him. One of Rick's lines, he doesn't repeat that often because he knows what I'll say, but he'll go at some point in our conversation, he'll say, I have issues. And I go, yes, Rick,
yes, you do.
You have issues.
But it's not Parkinson's.
You have a ton of issues. So he doesn't walk into that one as often as he used to, but
Patrick, I'm too busy trying to get my pants on.
But we've drank a lot of wine. We've attended a lot of Parkinson's functions together. I felt like I've been in that journey with Richard or Ricardo or El Capitano, as I call him, and his wife Donna.
I know. What a great name.
And so Donna and Rick and I have hung out a million times and shared wine and laughed about our various maladies. And then my cancer came back, and I had to do radiation, and these two were around to help me through that. And we recognize that the more we can laugh and share, it makes this a great journey. And so it does interest me. It's always interested me. And Rick said, let's talk Parkinson's. I said, yeah, let's do it. Because I've talked to a lot of Parkinsons.
And
I don't have it.
You're like the producer. Is that where you're going to function? Or are you going to be on the show moderating? What are you going to be doing?
I'm going to be helping. Yeah, I'll help moderate. These guys are the moderators. And I'll be moderating the moderators.
You're babysitting the two. That's what.
Because you see Ivan. I mean, he's trouble. Clearly,
I know he looks innocent, but
he gives you that eye, and you can see this is a man who's handled
twinkle in his eye. That's right.
So my journey with Parkinson's has been knowing Rick, and knowing a lot, and I know what he's done for the Parkinson's community, how much money he's raised, how many people he's brought into the fold, and this is perfect for him. And if I can help in that, this is perfect for Rick, because everywhere he goes, he brings people back, brings them in, and people need to be here. Ivan and Rick are both people that have in their way have created communities, and I think for them to share their experiences and their abilities as community raisers is so important to this. And I think it'll help the Parkinson's group, to get other people there, because they can do it. They're both profoundly interesting and real, and they're living the journey. This is a journey with Parkinson's, and they're both at parts of their journey. And I think for them to talk about that is fascinating, and to bring others to talk about it.
I agree.
So I want to be there as part of that conversation. And we've already proven with ourselves, when the three of us just talk, that we start talking, and I say, hey, you guys, this should have been a podcast. We'll be talking about drinking wine, or we'll be talking about our wives or something like that. And I say, damn it, we should have been recording this. This was a podcast. This was a podcast. I feel like Seinfeld, right? Remember, they kept going, what's an episode about? And they go, well, we had Chinese dinner last night. And they go, that's an episode. And I think everything is how these two live with Parkinson's, their journeys. I think it's something anyone who's been diagnosed or who will be diagnosed will appreciate.
I agree. Ivan, I saw that you wanted to say something.
Yeah. Because Parkinson's, just like Rick has said before, it's an individual disease. Individual. So what works for one person doesn't work for another person. And I could take, just from taking my medication, you think you got it right, but I might take my levodopa carbidopa correctly, on time and on point, from 2 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, all on time, and take the breather at that, along with it, one day, and then the next day, it's like you're just stuck.
Literally.
You're trying to put your pants on.
Dude, that is going to become the theme. I swear to God. All right, wait. We've said it a couple times. Rick, tell the story on how this came and what we're talking about, so the audience is not scratching their head here.
Well, yes. Well, we all know that Parkinson's, well, if you don't know, I'm going to tell you, is a progressive disease. So you start off at one place and you end up at a much different place as you go along. Things that you would take for granted, like putting your pants on or taking your pants off. when you had all your balance, all your wits about you, you just stand up, get on one leg, pull your pants off, then next leg, pull the other leg off, and your pants are off. Or same thing, putting them on. As you progress through this disease, you end up usually having a little balance issue. And you would think that you would learn that as your balance issues progress, that it's a lot easier to sit down and put your pants on or take your pants off. No. For 5 years now, I've been working with this balance issue. I'm going to beat it because my wife is just tired of watching me just fall down. She's like, there he goes. He's down again. You just got to put all these rubber things around the room so he doesn't hurt himself too bad.
We're gonna put this in context, though, Rick. This is the conversation that happened before we officially recorded was how stubborn men could be. And that's where Rick goes, yeah, you should see being like that with Parkinson's. And then here comes the pants story. He's like, I'm convinced I'm going to beat it. And I'm sure your wife is like, go for it.
Oh, yeah. I'll be in a skirt pretty soon if this doesn't see it better. I got to tell you.
Just say you're Scottish. You're good.
There you go. Got my kilt. I'm ready to roll.
Maybe we need, that's what you need. Do you need a Parkinson's kilt? You need a specific kilt.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go. See, I knew something big was going to come out of this thing. A Parkinson's kilt. You learned something up there in Lakenheath, didn't you? I'm
telling you, you need a specific logo on a kilt, and you need to start doing that. And you need to sell it to the wives, and you need to tell them, see, when they're being so stubborn and they keep falling, just give them the kilt. It's manly enough.
That's right. And the sporn that goes with the kilt, I can put my wine in there. I got this figured out.
Oh my God.
You've opened up a whole new world.
I'm a new man. This is it.
And we're done. We've just invented. We can
use that for a fundraiser.
It could be a fundraiser.
It'd be fun.
We're laughing, but I'm seeing all the wheels turning. Patrick's sitting back there like, how do I work on this?
No, I'm already going trademark Donna Hoffmeyer. Trademark this kilt is already. We got it trademarked in her name already.
This is hilarious.
It's her idea.
Oh my God, that is the funniest thing. There's seriousness in that.
Patrick says it's not too far now.
Whoa! What do you mean?
I think we need to run it. I bet your wife would agree with us. She'd be like, "Let's do it."
You haven't seen my legs.
This was an example, Donna, we were talking about. This is an episode. I mean,
it is.
Men don't change. They could have Parkinson's or not, and they're, they don't ask for directions. They don't ask for directions. They do it. But Parkinson's adds an interesting element to it, to the fact that we're men,
Here's your, okay, there's the podcast right there. We're going to have your whole lineup done. Really, it's so funny. My husband and I were just talking about this morning. Men being fix it, right? I'm going to fix it. And so they're the protectors in the house. They're the breadwinners. And I'm saying stereotypically, right? There's this cultural expectation, right? They're the fixers, they're the protectors and all that. And now you go slap on a diagnosis of Parkinson, and now you need help. And that's a whole psychological thing that you should explore in another podcast, because I swear I keep running us down rabbit holes that we shouldn't be in. But did you write that one down, Patrick?
I think, Donna, it's in our list. I believe depression.
Yeah, what it leads to.
All of the things that you would imagine would happen with any great diagnosis, a diagnosis of this magnitude.
Yeah.
It happens, and these two can tell you pretty much about all of it.
So go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to build on what Patrick said, and one of the things that we all agree on, Patrick, Ivan, and myself, is that Parkinson's itself is not a death sentence, and people that get this thing, have got to understand it is not. My life has actually gotten better in a lot of different ways than it was before. And sometimes you got to dig deep. You know, there's a silver lining in every gray cloud. But truly, we have to leave this with people that this is not a death sentence. It's how you approach it. And your approach, I like to think of my Parkinson's now as a minor inconvenience to my life. And just things. And there's a lot of inconveniences in life, and there's a lot worse inconveniences than Parkinson's.
Would you say, based on that, just what popped in my head is that as veterans, we are go-to people, right? There is a certain level of pride that we have. We wore the uniform. We did things that most people didn't. We're the 1%, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And when you made the comment that, you know, this is a minor hiccup in life, how do you think a veteran, I mean, you are veterans, like, did that affect, I don't know if I'm saying it right, did that affect kind of like your ego? Like you're not that military person anymore? Was there any of that, or were you too far out of the military? You know, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Go ahead, Ivan.
Well, in order to tackle Parkinson's, you have to have a calmness about yourself. I was thinking about that just this morning. I wouldn't wish Parkinson's or cancer on nobody.
Right.
However, if you have a calm mind and a military mind, you can get places. For example, when I went to Norwich University in Vermont, we squared corners. It's a private military school. And we had to go to those routes and do that stuff. A lot of those principles that I learned in the military, with a calm mind, I'm able to make it. Because there are times when I could be walking up the steps and I'm getting ready to trip. So I got to relax my mind in order to make my foot move one foot in front of the other. Honestly, it happens.
That's a phenomenal way of looking at it, because to me, the first thing I think of is you immediately have to have humility in this. You know, like you're going from do everything, you know, got it all going on to I got to take a breath to make sure I don't trip up the step. I mean, that's a big difference. And I think how you framed it is perfect, Ivan. I think that's a phenomenal way of looking at it.
And you framed it perfect also in the way explaining that. On point. Tight shot group, that's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. All right, so you guys have been working with bringing awareness, right? In many different ways, you guys do this. And when did the idea of podcasts come up? Like how, because I want to talk about how you guys are doing this podcast, because I just think it's great. I mean, we've had lots of conversations about it, but how did this concept come up?
I'll speak to that first.
God
gave me an epiphany to meet this guy named Rick at Mid-Atlantic Parkinson Symposium some like 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I first had it. And, you know, my friend met Donna, and she said, well, you want to know, you got to meet my husband, Rick.
The other Donna, not this Donna. His Donna.
His Donna, yeah. Rick Donna. But when we laid eyes on each other, just like a book, and I still can't remember that author's name, but there's a book that if you look at a person, it's called The Twinkle Effect. Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book. There is. Malcolm Gladwell writes the book on that. At a twinkle of an eye, you could look at a person and tell that you're going to be best friends for the rest of your life. And that's why I saw him immediately. And we started talking and everything. I'll let Rick take it from there because he tells stories better than me.
It's
Go ahead,
bros at
Rick.
first sight.
Now it isn't that I tell stories better than Ivan. It's that I'm a pilot, and a pilot never lets the truth stand in the way of a good story. So,
There is actually truth in that right there.
if you've seen the animal, you know the animal, right? But no, Ivan captured that just right. I saw this guy, and I fell in love with him immediately, and I knew he was struggling, and look at him today. He's been through
Thriving.
and I think he's stronger and better for it right now. I mean, the man has had DBS, deep brain stimulation. He is absolute. He's for me. He is everything I want to be that strong. And I tell you, everybody comes and looks at me and says, "Oh, Rick, you're so strong. You do this, you do that." I say, "No, I'll tell you about strong. I'll talk about people that were actually in combat, like Ivan was, like Patrick's son was. These are heroes. I mean, I was in the Air Force looking for the next best golf course, flying C-130. So
Lordy.
yeah.
Wait, so you guys met. I'm gonna go to two topics. I want to talk about the podcast and how the idea came, and then we're gonna go backwards a little bit, and we're gonna talk about you guys reflecting on what you see now. So the podcast idea. Whose idea was this? Was this a joint thing? Was this just something that you guys talked about that we should do a podcast someday? Was this?
I was the first one that mentioned that we should do a podcast one day to Rick over about a year and a half ago, because there was nothing going on through the pandemic, and something had to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And especially after I got DBS surgery. When you get DBS surgery, I actually wanted to run for Congress because they don't do nothing in Congress. That was my thought. But despite of that, right there, I said I have to do something. When they wake you up during the DBS surgery, you can get to talk because the doctor's seeing where to put the electrode
Right.
in your head. And that's how that helps out. You get waking back up again, you can talk. And that's the first thing I said. I have to do something, not run for Congress. I have to do something for Parkinson's. And Rick was the first person that came in mind. I said, we got to do a podcast one day on Parkinson's. I just kept saying, the next thing you know, I'll let Rick take it from here. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, so Ivan brings this idea to me, and then I call Patrick up, and I said, "Patrick, I got this friend of mine who's got a hole in his head from DBS, and he wants to do a podcast. What do you think?" No, I'm kidding. No, Ivan came to me with the idea of the podcast, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant because it's an opportunity to really talk about things that people don't talk about. You go see your doctor, you go see your neurologist, and I can tell you, we'll do a whole session on doctors and why you want to go to a neurologist, why you want to go to see a specialist that specializes in Parkinson's, mm-hmm. because it's such a unique disease and how it's treated. And so the notion of a podcast allows us to talk about what life is really like at different phases of this disease. And I think more people that are educated that have this or know somebody that has it or is, a caregiver with somebody, better chances they have to understand and how to treat this. And I think if it's treated well and it's treated early and you continue that treatment, it becomes a regimen in your life and you work through it and your friends. We don't do this by ourselves. Ivan doesn't do it by himself. I don't do it by myself. I mean, it's having people in your family, your friends. I mean, here's Patrick. He's got a lot of other things he could be doing right now other than sitting here, helping us with this thing. But it is a community. And we believe, and I know Ivan and I have talked about this enough, that we think getting this information out to people is going to help people. It's going to save people's lives. It's going to save marriages. It's going to save families. It's going to be good for the community. Like I said, it's not a death sentence. And that's what we have to get out to the people. And we got to talk about it. There's still a lot of levity in this whole thing. I'll go back to trying to put my pants on. I've been thinking about that for about the last 10 minutes, how I'm going to get these pants off again today without falling down. But we'll get there.
But this is what I like, right? Like I don't even remember how Coming Home Well got involved. I do. Cindy, we've had so much stuff going on. Cindy somehow reaches out to me and tells me about you guys. And I'm like, okay. And then we start meeting. And that was, Ivan, you remember? See, my brain's
yes,
fried.
the way it happened was I did an interview with Mike Kim.
Oh, yeah. Mike Kim.
Went to Norwich together.
Oh, you guys went to Norwich together?
No, well, I actually was in the 80s. He was in the 90s.
Ah, yes. But Mike, that's right. He has podcasts, veteran, etc. Yeah.
Mike is about, he used to be a monk and everything.
He's fascinating.
What really got us together, the religion part and our faith.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost say the faith is what got us together.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, Mike is so busy though.
Yes.
He's busy getting ready to be get his doctorate degree.
He's in a dissertation right now. Mm-hmm.
So he's doing quite a bit. And after that, when she saw me on that interview, she said, "Who is that guy?"
Yes.
And I wanted to do more with Mike on podcast. I thought it was going to be him. The next thing you know, boom, Cindy calls me from out of nowhere and talks to me. We start talking about podcasts, and then I get a hold of Rich. I said, "Rich, I got the way that we could do a podcast now. I got the way."
Listen to that evil laugh. He's like, "I got it. Go ahead, Rick."
I really used to like Ivan, but he's drugged me into these things. And then Patrick's going, "What am I doing here?"
He's like, "I just show up. I'm just showing up all the time doing stuff with these yahoos."
This is
You're
really
on mute,
cool
Patrick.
That's why we got a lawyer.
Right.
Sorry, I was muting my cough. No, I just want to say, in that little conversation, there's another episode.
See, he's like writing them down.
Ivan with deep brain stimulation. Rick, not deep brain. That's a whole conversation. Why does one person have it and the other one does not? And that's because there are people making that decision all the time, right, Ivan? They're, whether or not to have the deep brain stimulation. Rick, you people who've had it, who you've discussed it, I'm sure, and everyone in Parkinson is going to talk about that at some point. It's a great thing for you two guys to talk about why it was right in this case and why it wasn't right in this case.
And the personal journey, like that's a personal journey. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is I'm taking this slow. I'm keeping a close eye on Ivan. See how he does with this before I sign up for that. It's the old military thing. You never want to volunteer. That's right. You never want to be the first to anything. You want to say, "I'll beat you. Be here when you leave. Be here when you get back, and then I'll reassess what's going on here."
He's like, "You're doing good."
You can't be right when the doctor says, "I got an idea. I'm going to drill a couple holes in your brain. Through your skull, into your brain, I'm going to put these little plugs in there." Now think about that. Just on the basis of we know there's something not right about that.
And yet here we are. He's holding up his monitor, his stimulator. That's hilarious. Does your wife, Ivan? Does your wife ever take that and go, "You need more stim"? Does she come grab it from you?
She turns it off.
She makes sure that I have it all the time. It's called Miss Amelia. The reason why we call it Miss Amelia is because this is going to make me move. And I would say this, unfortunately, Amelia was my mom's name. So in my brain, my military brain, it tells me, you got to move. My mom didn't want to move no more. And that's why I love this. And that's why we named it Miss Amelia.
Does your wife take it and shut it off when she's like, "You're done"?
No.
He's like, "No, not yet."
I do have a quick story to tell. And before I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I had a very close friend of mine, and Patrick even knows who this gentleman was. He was a PhD scientist, anatomist. He even he ran gross anatomy and physiology at I think Georgetown University. He was chair of the department. He came down with Parkinson's, and that's how I ended up going to Georgetown and actually seeing a doctor there. But he had deep brain stimulation also, and I had to take him to Georgetown for his surgery, and he really had bad tremors. And when you go in for that surgery, you've got to go off your medication. So I picked him up like at 4:30 in the morning, right, at his place. We had to have him at Georgetown like at 6 or 5:30 in the morning, and he was off all his medication. I remember we're sitting down there at the intersection of what was that, Reservoir Road and whatever the crossroad was there, and we're stopped at the light, and I look over at Don, and there's Don just shaking and moving, and I'm like, thank God I don't have anything like that going on.
Little did you know. Well,
And
actually,
you realize,
go ahead.
years later, I know the bastard gave it to me. I'm telling you, he gave it to me. But in all seriousness, I'm looking at him, I'm going, thank God I don't have to deal with this. I don't have this. And you know what? Guess what?
Here you are. Well, that rolls perfectly into what I wanted to go back to. We're going to talk about this just briefly because you are going to have a whole series that you're going to get into deeply about this. But from each of you, Ivan and Rick, what we're reflecting back now and what you know, what were some of the early signs you saw and how much sooner was it than before your diagnosis? So, Ivan, go ahead.
Back in so I came back from Korea the second time, 1997, I was stooping a lot. And my ex might really took note of that I just walk. I was walking upright, but I was always stooping all the time. And stooping is one of the things that's an early sign of Parkinson's disease.
Wow.
And the way I walk.
Wow.
With that with that hip thing. And that's all we thought was my hip. But I was only, like I said, 2 weeks away from getting hip surgery. And I said, you want to know, I want a second and third consultation on what I really have. Because when I saw that picture, he was one of the catchers for the Padres. And I was walking like him. I said, you want to know what? I got what he's got. And they say he had Parkinson's disease on ESPN. It was one of those ESPN.
You saw
30.
that. Wow.
Yes.
And so that was 1997, and you were diagnosed in 2013. Right?
I was thankful that I had somewhere to go, like a hospital, especially the VA.
Yeah.
If you wasn't going to the VA, I don't know what would happen to me.
Yeah.
Because the VA, and I had one of the best in the world that could diagnose it. Him and his wife.
That's impressive because, unfortunately, we hear a lot of angst with the VA, and it's good. It's not all bad, right? It's not VA's like, I mean, there's issues like every place, and it's good to hear a solid story. You know what I mean? To hear that. Rick, what was yours early on?
Mine started, I would say it was 6 years before I actually was diagnosed that I knew something was going on. And there was a number of little, very, very small things. I actually even talked to my internist about it, on my regular yearly visits, physicals. And he says, Rick, he said, I don't think there's enough here right now for you to worry about this. He says, I don't see anything that would interfere with your job. But as it progressed, I got to start seeing some things. But to keep this on a very light note, one of the things that is a sure sign of Parkinson's, or one of the indicators, is a thing called micrographia. And micrographia is small, tiny handwriting. And I used to always have this large handwriting. And I would, over the last, probably 2 years before I was diagnosed, I would leave my wife a note, I'm leaving on a trip, see you when I get back, da 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 da. And she said, could you please just write a little bit bigger? She said, I got to get a goddamn magnifying glass out to read the note you left me. And I remember one of my last flights, we had to fill out internationally, you had to fill out your customs sheet. And the purser of the flight would come up and hand you this sheet, and everybody would fill it out. And we were on the bus getting ready to drive through customs immigration because we didn't go through with the passengers. And she's got this sheet out and she goes, oh my God, who is this? She said, I can't even read this thing. And I swear to God, it's the craziest thing in the world. You don't even realize you're doing it.
Right.
I mean, you can't get a Sharpie sharp enough to get the thing to write. So, I mean, I could put a paragraph in something about this big. And that was one of the funny things about, a sure sign of that. And as soon as they started me on medication, one of the first things that changed was my handwriting came back.
Wow.
It was pretty amazing. But it was early on I knew that there was a problem. And my Parkinson's was more to do with rigidity than it does with tremoring. I still tremor, but rigidity is my big problem. So I get a lot of Botox and a lot of other things that I have to get done to keep me loosened up and whatnot. But very interesting. And that was one of the things. I always had these aches and pains in my right arm, my right foot, and I couldn't understand what the heck was going on. And all this time, it was there. A lot of people don't know it, but by the time you're diagnosed with Parkinson's, usually about 70% of all the dopamine in your body, and that's what makes you feel good. It makes the synapse work in the nerves, so you have this free motion and stuff like that, is gone by the time you're diagnosed. So this starts very, very early on, but it doesn't manifest itself into perceptible how should I say that?
Measurable.
Measurable.
Yeah.
Until you get that far along in that. So think about it. You've lost 70% of this stuff that cannot be replaced in the body. There's no replacement for it. And that's one of the big problems with Parkinson's.
Have you seen, this is what popped in my head when you said that. Have you seen the art display of it's a arm, like almost like an excavator arm, and the machine is constantly losing oil, and so it's scraping the oil back to itself, right? And eventually the arm will stop working because the oil will deplete, right? And that's what went in my head, because that art, I don't know if it's still going, that art exhibit. It's been years, and I truly have a hard time watching that. I think it is the saddest exhibit I've ever seen. It's very powerful exhibit.
Well, if I can say this, Patrick knows me very, very well. He's followed me through this journey from my diagnosis on, and he can tell you probably the changes that he's seen in me, and that's even under treatment.
Yeah,
it's a progressive disease.
Yeah. It is progressive.
It is. And as Ivan says, it's so individual. It's so individual how it impacts Ivan versus Rick. When Rick told me he had Parkinson's, what I envisioned, and to think we're 15 years later, and he seems like the same guy I met 15 years ago. I know what he's gone through, the aches and pains and the surgeries and stuff. But what I envisioned would happen because I had a father-in-law with Parkinson's, and his journey was much different.
Yes.
Much different. He was he was drooling. He was
very
drooling
advanced.
and drooling, and
Yeah.
and couldn't get out of a chair. So when Rick told me about this, I was like, oh my God. But I learned from going to meetings with Rick is it's everyone on the spectrum. And I haven't said it best. I mean, everyone's on the spectrum for someone who's got impacted this way or that way or ways you can't see, to people that are falling down,
Well,
all the time.
it's interesting because, we're sitting here on, video and we only release the audio portion. And I just tell them it's because I don't want to do hair and makeup all the time.
Me neither.
See, exactly.
Me
We
either.
make it easy. But as I'm looking at you both, Rick and Ivan, like the only time that I can pick up on Ivan, and maybe it's because my clinical background, the strained voice is always assigned to me. And that's from the rigidity. And that's why you chew gum to keep all that, moving. And on Rick, I'll tell you, I'll go back to you in a minute, Ivan. And on Rick, I don't normally see it in him. Today's the first time, and it's only when you raise your hand I can see the slight tremor, which is why he's not holding wine. We all know that. But see, he's laughing.
Wine steadies the hand.
See, maybe that's it. There needs to be research on this, but that's it. Otherwise, if I'm just looking at you, never guess it. But go ahead, Ivan. You smiled when I said that.
Yeah. How did you don't know that?
Wow.
What did you see?
I did seeing anything like you chewing gum wouldn't have alerted me to anything. I know just from my background and taking care of people, that strained voice makes me go, I wonder what's going on with that person. I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, immediately they have Parkinson's, but I would say, something's going on. And then, but I wouldn't, on a day-to-day, I wouldn't have picked up, like a lay person wouldn't pick up on that.
The gum helps me make sure that I don't have a masked face at times because I just took my medication at 2:00.
Right. Exactly.
So right now it's going through me, and the tingle is going on and everything. And I'm just making sure that my upper face is moving so that way I won't be sitting down looking like, just straight ahead, but I can move.
Wax museum.
That's me.
I do have to leave us in this thing with at least one more story.
Okay, it's good timing because we're going to wrap it up.
These stories just come, with the disease.
Patrick's taking notes. If I look down and his head's down, and I know he's just writing one after the other right now.
So I have all this rigidity in my neck, down my leg, and all this stuff, and I also have what's called vasovago, and that's needles. Like you get needles, I pass out. Right? They go take my blood. I got to lay down, or I'm going to pass out. So I'm in there seeing my neurologist and I had all this pain. I can't move my neck at all, seriously, and my leg and my foot. He says, I think it's time we start Botox. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I'm not neurology. I'm going to be on a skirt pretty soon. I'm going to have to get all the wrinkles taken out. He said, no, he said, we have great success using Botox to loosen up, these muscles. And he explained to me that what's really going on, like in your neck. Mm-hmm. This muscle's pulling this way, this muscle's pulling that way. I was so hyperextended. I mean, it looked like I was working. I looked like the Hulk because I was constantly fighting. My clothes wouldn't fit right and all this. So I go in there and he says, what we do is we give you a couple injections. Well, it's not a couple. It's like about 20 injections, right? And I'm like, oh man, this is my worst nightmare. And he started to say, we'll have to deal with your foot too. And I'm like, oh, needles in my foot. This is really not something I'm signing up for, right? So I go in there. I mean, we're like 7 minutes into the process. And I'm like, I'm passing out, mate. I got to lay down. So what's supposed to take usually about 5 to 10 minutes to do was taking like an hour and 30 minutes. So we went through this. You can only get Botox every 90 days. Right. Insurance will pay for it every 90 days. So you schedule 91 days out, right? So I I go in, this is like the fourth time, and he's like, Rick, we got to stop. This just isn't working really well, is it? He says, I got to see other patients. I'm taking gonna be a whole day getting you just the Botox in you. He says, here's what I want you to do. He wrote me a prescription for 2 Valium.
I knew it. I was like, Valium will work.
He says, I want you to make the early morning appointment at 9 o'clock. He said, when you get up in the morning at 6 for your pill, your regular Parkinson's medication, take a Valium. He said, when you get to my office, take the second one. So I did as instructed, as ordered, sir. I tell you, I walked in there. I was the man. I was like,
happy.
Give me some needles, man. It hurt me more. I said, I can't wait till you get to the bottom of my foot because I like that.
Oh my God.
You're making
me laugh because I'm going to call out one of my friends. I won't say her name, but she is claustrophobic and she needed an MRI. And she said, hey, they have open MRIs, but those are hard to get into. And she had to get this done. And she's like, will you bring me down? Because I have to take a Valium and I'm just going to take one and that's it. And I said, okay. So I knew in my head, I'm like, she ain't going to go with just one. I know her. She's a good friend. And so she goes in, that goes in the back and the guy comes out. He goes, she asked if you could go get the other Valium. And I said, sure, no problem. So I go get it, run out, bring it to her. Okay, we're good. They come out and said, okay, we're all done. She's just changing. Okay, this is at 6 p.m. At 6:25, I'm like, where is she? I don't see her, right? So she comes out and she was so high. She was like, I couldn't get my pants on. I didn't know how to open the locker. My shirt got tangled over my head. She goes, that second one threw me over the edge.
I did that. Something, I did the exact same thing Monday. I had to have an MRI in my lower spine.
Yeah.
It was an hour-long MRI. And I said, you know what? I think I got one of these Valiums sitting around. So I get down to Georgetown. I walk in there, grab a glass of water, take a Valium. They come out and says, Mr. Schena, you ready for your MRI? I said, yeah. So I change in this stuff, jump in this bad boy. They put my knees up there. I'm on my back, got the hands down, put some jazz music on. They had to wake me up.
Let me tell you, I do that.
An hour later, she says, Mr. Schena, it's over. You can come out now. Oh, okay.
If it tells you anything, how tired working mommy over here when I was in the military, they're like, I need an MRI. And they're like, okay. So they start prepping me like, do you need any meds? I'm like, no. And they're like, okay, so we have to put you in this way. And then you have to come out and go in this way. It was like kind of a long process. I'm like, okay. And they're like, do you need anything? I'm like, well, it's kind of cold. And they're like, well, we have a warm blanket. I'm like, that's all I need. They give me earplugs. They had to wake me up. I'm like, this is nap time for me. This is awesome. And they're like, are you sure? And they pull me out and they're like, we've never seen anybody do this without meds. I'm like, working mommy, snap time. Yeah, I love it. So, all right, guys, I don't want to go too deep into anything because this is going to be your podcast and it's going to be amazing. And I seriously am so excited to have this start. I want to put one more plug in. So, Ivan, you wrote a book. Let's talk about that real fast. What book did you write? He has it right beside him. Let me see it. We want to put a plug in for his book. He's looking for it. And then this way everybody can actually get to know him from the book before the podcast. What's the name of it?
Called My Life, My Faith, My Service. Now I'm fighting Parkinson's disease. It's a long title, but it's worth the reading.
And where can you buy it?
The story that we told today is in the book. There's like 35 stories in here. One book.
Of other people or other Parkinsons or just yours?
Things that I went through.
You went through. Perfect.
I got a story for everything.
You do have a story for everything.
Even when I go to the bathroom, Those times are crazy.
So that's because Rick's in there trying to get his damn pants on standing up. That's why. See, it's a mess. Where can you buy the book?
I would. It's called www.ivantheauthor.com.
ivantheauthor.com. Is it on Amazon or anything like that, or is it just directly through you?
Barnes and Noble.
You could get it on Amazon, but Amazon's on my website.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so go to your
Barnes
website.
Noble's on my website.
Okay.
If you go direct to Barnes Noble, they get 70% of the.
Oh, I know the game. I know the
So
game.
that's why I try to get people to go to my website.
All right. So ivantheauthor.com. So you can go check this out. All right. We're going to go around the room, short version. Any last words you guys want to impart to the audience before we wrap up? Go ahead,
Well,
Ivan.
Go ahead.
Any last
I'm going to
words?
let you go first, Rick.
Okay. Rick, go ahead.
I just want to thank you and your organization for what you're doing. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think, this isn't about just Parkinson's, it's about coming home well.
Yes.
And I think something everybody can use. This isn't just for vets, this is for everyone.
Agreed.
And I want to applaud you guys for doing this and taking that step. That's big time.
Give that shout out to Cindy and her sixth sense. She really does know how to find people, and she's pretty amazing. She always hides behind the scenes, but I call her out almost every podcast. We give a shout out to her because she really is a mastermind behind a lot of this. And Ivan, what do you got?
I'm going to give a shout out to Mike Kim.
Good old Mike.
No. With no cadets together, we will always try. That's the engineer model. I will try.
Perfect.
And I want people to know that, just like what Rick was saying, and Patrick was saying, Parkinson's is not a death sentence. But the way you get through it is you have to have a calm attitude. Because if you try to go through it and everything's hysterical, you're not going to get through it.
Yeah.
You'll be thinking other things. I know what I'm talking about.
Mind over matter. That's what I hear out of you.
That's right.
All right. Patrick, my hidden corporate lawyer, any last words?
Well, number one, Donna, you're hilarious. So that certainly that certainly comes through. You're like hilarious. And no, I think this will be these two are great, and I think there's a whole community. I love the theme of coming home well. As you know, my son served 2 combat tours in Iraq. And as a parent, it was a unique perspective to, to what a soldier goes through, what a soldier goes through in those places.
Mm-hmm.
And that for anyone who's served and come up against a disease like Parkinson's, it's huge, and it's something we need to impart some wisdom on.
Yeah, and I didn't even want to touch veterans and Parkinson's impact and all that, because that is going to be I know it'll be one of your podcasts, and that's a whole story that I didn't even want to touch, because that's going to be a great one to talk about. And I agree. And I do like how you point out, like, from a parent perspective, right? To see your child grow, right, is, the best feeling in the world. And to see them struggle is some of the worst feelings in the world. And struggle when it's their journey and you can't fix it anymore. You can't put the Band-Aid on it. You can't do those things that the tools that you had don't work anymore. And that's hard. But when you see them coming through the other side, it's gratifying. And yeah, it's a duality of parenthood, I think.
Yeah. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard. But fortunately, these two are brilliant.
They are.
And articulate. And that is great to impart. And I'm glad we have a chance to do it.
And you make a good point. So from my end here, Ivan was remembering things that I couldn't even remember, like how we all met. And Ivan's like, I'll tell you. And so I think that's a good point. This podcast that's coming out, Let's Talk Parkinson's and Other Things, is meant to teach people how to thrive with what's been thrown or given to them, or however you want to look at that, right? And it is a personal journey, but Ivan and Rick can both give their accounts, and they'll do it in a way that has some levity to it. You heard us joking around a lot about a really serious topic. You know, I mean, that's a blow when you hear that word. You're like, can't be me, you know, or thank God it's not me. And then boom, it is me, right? There you go, Rick. I'm not sure if you call that karma. Like, I don't know what that is. But I mean, we joke about that, but we also know that humor is part of our superpower, right? It is how we cope and how we learn to process stuff. And I think, Rick and Ivan, what you guys are going to do, and Patrick, because Patrick's going to bring some moderator humor to all this. I think what you guys are doing, you are setting a precedent that is incredible. I mean, I just think this is one of the greatest things that we're going to have on the radio stream. And it will be housed afterwards. Are you guys doing a YouTube with it, or we haven't decided yet? You guys are just kind of doing the radio, and then we're figuring out where it's going to be housed afterwards. Because people will be able to follow up after. If they hear it on the radio stream, there will be a place for them to go back and find it. Am I correct on that?
There will.
Yes.
Yes, it will, yeah.
We're all in the works. So we say all this because everything's in the works and it's building right now. So it's coming. And when it comes out, trust me, there'll be lots of marketing on it. And honestly, that's the one thing I wanted to do. I popped right up and said, let's do a promo podcast because I want to interview these guys because we all just laugh in regular meetings. So this has been a true honor. I am so excited for you guys, and I'm so excited for the audience that we have you guys that will share this in a very relatable, authentic way, and that's what's really needed. So, all right, we're going to wrap this up. So, as always, we are very, very thankful for all of you that are sharing and liking and commenting. We want to hear from everybody. You know, all the young people say, smash that button or whatever those cool things are that they do. But we want more of that because we really want to get out there and we really want to engage. And don't forget that as of February 5th, we just launched Coming Home Well's radio stream. And all of our podcasts are going to be on that, along with music and short bit shows and informational pieces and all kinds of good stuff that we're constantly adding to. So from all of us here at Beyond the Frontline and our parent podcast, Coming Home Well, we hope you have an awesome week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Frontline, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review.